Hi everyone, welcome to today's science versus bullshit. Because I'm actually 30 seconds early, so we'll see what happens when this goes now. Boom, it's okay, it's all working. That's probably the smoothest transition that I've ever been able to do. So that okay, right, fine. Now it's relatively smooth. Right, if anyone has any questions, as usual, fire away. I do have many excellent question. There's me emailing myself, telling myself that I'm like, wow. I do have many good questions today, and the main topics are going to be hormone balancing and fasted training, because those are the two biggies that I have been sent that have been confusing people this week. And then I've collated some of the questions that you guys sent. So then I'll do them. And then if anyone has any live, or they're confused about what I've said, or they just have anything they want to say, that's why it's live. You can comment away. So the first one was fasted training, and I got sent this reel by Nima, who is a coach of mine on AFM. And it was quite interesting because the woman was obviously very intelligent. Basically, the reel was saying the crux of it is training fasted is bad. It raises certain hormones, especially cortisol. It puts you into a kind of stress state, and then your body won't spend fat. So the analogy that she uses is if you didn't know when you were going to be paid again, then you wouldn't spend all your money. And this is what your body's like when you're training fasted, because it doesn't know when it's going to be able to eat again. So it doesn't want to give up fat, which is interesting because actually the exact opposite happens. And when you train fasted, you actually utilize more fat for fuel than when you train in a fed state. Neither of these really matter for body fat. But technically, like, that's definitely not true. And it's a nice analogy, and you can kind of see why people use them because it's quite convincing. You're like, oh, this is just like this. And it's like, yeah, except for the fact that it's definitely not just like that. Your body isn't like, oh, we don't know when we're going to be fed again. We'll just not use any energy. Like, you will still have to use energy. It will still have to come from somewhere, and you will still be using fat, whether you're fed or whether you're fasted. And I kind of hate using like really crude analogies like this, or really crude, not analogies, but like examples of when this is literally happening. But there is probably no more stressful state than like being in a war zone and not being able to get to food. And yet people don't magically store onto in like calories in those situations. Your stress response doesn't do that. It can't do that. It's impossible for it to do it. So as much as it was like kind of a nice analogy, there's a bits of science thrown in, slightly out of context. You can see why people kind of follow the narrative of it. It makes logical sense, and then you nod along and you're kind of convinced by these things. Another claim that was made in it is that when you train fasted, your fat becomes invisible as a fuel source. This isn't true. Obviously, you utilize more fat when you train fasted, not less. And then she also uses the example of like your body has to feel safe in order to lose fat, which again is completely untrue. It's just weird, like fear mongering. And when you ask for evidence for people who say that fasted training is bad, they will do one of three things usually. They will either give you the same rat study that everybody quotes, which is done on rats and hasn't been translated into humans. And this does show that when you train rats or exercise rats in a fasted state, there is some menstrual dysfunction, which could suggest that there's something that's impacting their hormones in a negative way. This hasn't been replicated in humans. And also we see that you can absolutely lose fat in women. There are studies on that. And there are studies comparing body composition changes when you train in a fasted state compared to when you train in a fed state, and they are the same. So we know that there's not a big impact, if any at all. And then the second thing that people do is they will use evidence that is actually research on chronically low energy availability, not whether or not you had breakfast in the morning. Like those are massively different things. So normally when someone's like, yeah, but look, there's this evidence on, I don't know, chronic elevations of cortisol or chronic stress responses that could be negative or that do impact menstrual cycle or that do impact certain hormone regulation. But that wouldn't be from doing fasted training. That would be from being in a chronically low energy state. And like I said, those are massively different things. And then the third thing is people just actually decide that actually they don't have any evidence. They just like the story that the body sometimes like holds on to fat in a stress state, can't cope, and then goes into starvation mode, and that's why you should never train fasted. It's interesting to kind of work through these, because if this was true, then we're kind of accepting that humans have evolved over millions of years to be incapable of exercising without eating 30 minutes beforehand. Like, we would be extinct by now if that was the case. We are far more adaptable, far more resilient than many people will have you believe. And you can cope with various stresses. And the stresses aren't necessarily bad. Like, all exercise is a stress on the body. That's not a bad thing. And it being in a fasted state isn't a bad thing either. And I'd note here that, like, I'm not pro training fasted. I'm not anti training fasted. If it suits you to get up in the morning and get a workout done before you have breakfast, and that works for you, don't be scared of doing that. If you feel so much better when you have already eaten before you train, great, then eat before you train. That's, again, not going to make much difference at all. So do what works for you, but it's really just not that deep. Like, there's no massive benefit either way. And I find it's quite an interesting myth, because you have people arguing both sides. Like, you have some people that are like, yeah, when you train fasted, you burn more fat, thus you should train fasted. And then you have people that are like, when you train fasted, you go into starvation mode and you don't burn fat, thus you shouldn't train fasted. And it's like, both of you are wrong. It actually just really isn't that deep and doesn't really matter that much. And if you are in a chronically low energy state, then that would be the thing that you'd be focused on, not whether or not you're training fasted. So there you go. Hopefully that clears that up. Is there any question? What, the one time I did, if we are meant to be able to see you on Substack, we can't. Oh, well, that's great. Stacey Sims has talked about this. I've been fasted training for over a year, 45-minute high rock sessions before work a couple of times a week. Fine, Lisa, it's clearly working for you. This is the other thing I find interesting. I have conversations with real people who have been doing it for years and who are getting great results, and they're like, oh, I'm suddenly worried that actually I'm in starvation mode and I'm not losing fat. And I'm like, but are you losing fat? And they're like, yeah. And are you feeling good? Yeah. And is your performance improving? Yeah. Okay, then you're fine. Okay, lots of people can see me. That's great. And I'm assuming you can hear me as well, or you wouldn't know what I said, so fine. Apparently it starts breaking muscle down, made even worse when caffeinated. There's just no evidence for it. And I would definitely go and listen to Stacey Sims on, someone's going to be able to tell me what this is. The Docs Who Lift podcast, because that was very, very good. And you kind of can see where she's coming from. I feel like she kind of backtracks on a few things and is much more than like, yeah, well, actually, none of my messaging was meant for like general population women. It was all meant for kind of like athletic type women who very much might be in a low energy availability state. No, okay, that's slightly different than how it's coming across, but fair enough if that's actually who that messaging was meant for, which is another thing to be considering, is like the messaging that's being put out, who is that meant to be received by, and is it applicable to you or not? Emily, it might be because I'm on a bus. I'm sorry. That's okay. Enjoy your bus. I hope that you got the front seat at the top so you can pretend that you're driving. Okay, I heard on a running podcast you shouldn't run fasted when it's cold. I normally run early before breakfast. Will eat before. If I go for over an hour, will always drink 2 large teas before. Okay, this is interesting because I can't understand why specifically when it's cold. So I would completely ignore that you shouldn't be running fasted. In fact, the best athletes in the world for marathons train fasted. And they do it because it's too hot in the day and they get up and they run. And they are literally the world record holders, the best athletes in the world. So that part I wouldn't agree with. Now, I don't understand the rationale between like you shouldn't run fasted when it's cold. So I wouldn't know how to debunk that. I don't know what they've said. Yeah. Okay. I'm upstairs, but no driving seat for me. Stupid children got there first. It's really sad when kids get there because you can't be like, do you mind if I just sit here? Do you mind if I have a go? Can't wait till I have a child and I can be like, sorry, can we sit at the front of the bus? Sometimes you just get it anyway, though. It's the best seat. I don't know why people don't rush to it. Yeah, I agree. Selfish kids. Okay, right. Next thing I've been sent this so many times. Let me see if I can actually show you what I mean. Okay, this. Did it work? Yeah. I've been sent this many, many times. There's actually different versions of this. Sometimes it's someone's legs that are getting slimmer. This person actually, so the claim is it wasn't fat, it was cortisol all along. And then you have someone with quite a round face, someone with actually quite a normal face, and then someone with, has now started smiling and has a very slim face, and has also gone from having green eyes to brown eyes, which I don't know how that's also happened, but interesting that it has. Anyway, the claim here is that you can take this supplement, balance your hormones, balance your cortisol, and then you'll start losing fat. And actually, it wasn't, apparently it wasn't fat. It was cortisol that was stopping you lose fat. Anyway, if you ever read the claim, hormone balancing on a supplement, I would completely ignore it. To me, it seems like the new detox claim. So when there was all these claims that these supplements could detox you, actually, I'm sure there's still a ton around. And then when you ask, like, what is it that you're actually detoxing me from? They can't answer. It's kind of similar. If you say to someone, okay, like, which hormones are you balancing? Within which range? Are you going to test my hormones to see if they need balancing and that they stay within that range or that they're being balanced in some way? Based on what evidence can you balance my hormones based on the specific hormones that you're actually looking at? I can guarantee they won't be able to answer any of those questions because your hormones aren't something that need to be fixed with a supplement or balanced with a supplement. And in fact, your body acts in a very finely tuned, responsive network of homeostatic feedback loops, which work incredibly well. And the best way to keep these balanced and thus to keep your hormones balanced is to do things like optimize sleep, like eat a good, healthy, nutritious diet, like exercise consistently, do things that are that relieve your stress. But all of these things, like generally live a healthy lifestyle and your hormones will balance themselves. People are kind of looking at it the wrong way of like, God, I have this incredibly unhealthy lifestyle. I'm not sleeping, I'm not exercising, I'm overeating. What I'll do is I'll take this supplement to try and mitigate all of the massive core problems here. No, you need to take control of the core problems, and then actually you'll find that your hormones will balance themselves. And if they don't, then you certainly shouldn't be taking a supplement. You should be going and seeing a medical expert because there's something wrong there. So if anyone claims that they're balancing your hormones, go back to them, ask them which hormones within which range, will you be measuring these for me? Do we have evidence of this working, or are you just basing it solely off symptoms? And the symptoms are basically just normal human experiences. So to me, this just seems like the same con repackaged as detoxes. They can't tell you what they're detoxing you from. They can't tell you exactly how they're balancing your hormones or which hormones that they're trying to balance. Now, I did look into this supplement. I went and looked at the ingredients. This seems to be happening more and more, especially with supplements that are targeted towards menopause and menopausal symptoms, because they kind of try and target everything. So they'll have like, this had a lot of ingredients in it. I want to say potentially like over 10 ingredients. And all of them have like slight bits of evidence, but most of them are massively underdosed for the claims being made. And usually there's kind of one core ingredient. So the ingredient that has the most evidence in this specific product is ashwagandha, but it's underdosed in this product. And you'd be much better to take it on its own to see if that's what's actually working, not the 10 other things that are rammed in here. And it will be significantly cheaper, and you can take it at the appropriate dose than buy something like this. So a lot of the time, these supplements will add in their own kind of blend with loads of extra little things that may or may not do anything and may actually do something harmful or counteract each other in many cases. And then you don't really know what's working, but then they charge a premium for it. So you're much better to be like, right, what's the actual thing within this that's working? Let me try supplementing with that on its own at the right dose. I'd also be very careful with any kind of blanket statements, one size fits all type supplements. Women of menopausal age are often on other kind of medication as well. So supplements like this, especially ashwagandha, can impact thyroid medication, can impact SSRIs, can impact hypertensive medication, can have some of these ingredients could have an impact on HRT. You wouldn't want to be taking them if you were pregnant. Like there doesn't seem to be enough pre-screening for whether these are right for the people that they're being promoted to. So as usual, before you spend any money on supplements, especially expensive supplements, run them past me before you waste your money. But if you're thinking of trying this and you're specifically wanting the benefits of maybe potentially being a bit calmer, maybe you feel quite stressed, maybe you feel like you might have elevated cortisol, because that's often what people are selling you on is like, do you always feel stressed and tired and burnt out? Oh, you must have high cortisol. So if you have those feelings, you could try something like ashwagandha, assuming that you're not taking medications that might interact with that. And if you wanted to, and make sure it's at the right dose. But I wouldn't buy that. And also based on that claim, you know, like it wasn't cortisol, it was, oh no, it wasn't fat, it was cortisol all along. Like you're here because you don't want to be bullshitted. Like it was fat, you know, unless you have Cushing syndrome, then suggesting that it was cortisol is absolute bullshit. Like, and if you do have Cushing syndrome, then you need to go and see a doctor. By the way, the rates of that are much lower than what would be potentially proposed on social media at the moment. Very, very unlikely that you do have it. But if you are worried, then go and see your doctor. Don't buy a supplement because this won't help you anyway. And the truth is, body fat comes from an energy surplus. Chronically stressed people will likely have an increased appetite, will likely have poorer sleep, will mean that overeating is much more common for them. It's harder to get to the gym, it's harder to stick to their diet. They don't recover as well. They're always looking for energy elsewhere, i.e., making poorer food choices. That's why feeling stressed is linked to weight gain. It's not the cortisol itself. So what does actually work is trying to fix that sleep pattern. That's going to be like the biggest foundation. Getting in enough protein, getting in enough fruit and veg, getting to the gym a couple of times a week, even if you're starting small so you can build up that energy, because exercise in the right dose will give you more energy, not less energy. And then manage stress with, you know, things like going for walks, like listening to your favorite music, like actually having time off and turning your notifications off to do that. Social support, breath work if you're into that, journaling. My two favorite things that I don't think people talk about enough when it comes to managing stress: laughing more. Like, have you tried just laughing at yourself a little bit more, taking yourself a little bit less seriously? I quite like to get quite existential when I feel stressed. I'm like, wow, literally nothing I do matters. Like, I'll be dead in a short amount of time. And within 2 generations, no one's even going to remember what I do. Cool. So why are you so unbelievably stressed about this? Like, you are a tiny blip in the universe. Like, take the stress off yourself and then just have a bit of a laugh, and like whatever it is, it's a good story. It'll be funny at some point. And then the second thing is Google Calendar, which I'm obsessed with. And I just feel like I don't know how I lived my life without it before, but having some kind of electronic calendar so that you actually know what you're doing. Like, I would be so unbelievably stressed if I didn't have, like, my day blocked out, you know? Everyone's got a lot going on. You know, I'm running numerous businesses, but even if you're like, "No, yeah, but I don't do that, like, I don't have as much going on." Yeah, but you probably have kids, or you probably have friends that you're seeing as well, or you've got hobbies, or you've got a dog, you've got responsibilities, like, there are loads of things that you do every day, and part of your stress is probably coming from you thinking that you're gonna forget to do something. I certainly know that that was, like, a huge amount of my stress was coming from that, and as soon as I actually mapped it out and I was like, "Okay, I do have a massive to-do list, but I've now plotted it through my week, and actually it is doable. I don't need to do all of it today, and now I have a plan to do it." That makes such a big difference. So those would be my tips for reducing stress. Um, Okay, and then I also had a question about also, have some fun. Go and ride the bus sitting on the top seat at the front so you can pretend that you're driving it. Okay, I had a question too. If you think it has merit. I heard it debated the other day on a podcast and I thought it might be decent. With postprandial walking, by the way, that's a really posh way to say walking after you have some food, right? So nothing too fancy, but with postprandial walking, do you burn more calories if you're walking straight after eating? Because in theory, you're triggering the transporters to move glucose into the muscle so it'd be more efficient for fat burning. I know overall it's irrelevant as it's fat burning over the whole day, but I just thought it was a cool question. So it's a cool question, but it's wrong on numerous levels, right? So you won't burn more calories, full stop. But and then on top of that, you certainly won't burn more fat because if you've just eaten, you're going to be utilizing glucose for fuel, not fat for fuel. This doesn't matter for overall body fat. That simply comes from calorie balance at the end of the day. But if we're looking technically here, you won't be more efficient at burning fat. You'll actually be more efficient at utilizing glucose and clearing blood glucose. But you won't burn more calories unless you were exercising at a higher intensity or moving at a higher intensity or walking faster or further or something. So you'd burn the same amount of calories if you do the same walk before dinner or after dinner. That's not the benefit. The benefit to postprandial walking is that you're clearing glucose quicker because your muscles become more sensitive. They transport your glucose transporters to the cell surface. You can take in glucose quicker. But there's no benefit to burning more calories. And there will be a slight change in fuel utilization. Again, that really doesn't matter for anything. But you will be able to handle glucose better. And that's why we have people walk after meals. And I also think it just helps digestion as well. And I think there's three main benefits. There's the obvious glucose benefit. So specifically that's useful if you're pre-diabetic or diabetic. And then there's have I just forgotten one? I always do that. I'm like, I've got three things to say. Here's two. Okay, well then there's the oh no, I've got three. Then there's the digestion. It's been a long day. Digestion benefit of I just think it's nice to go for a walk after a meal. And then the third reason has escaped my mind again. What was the third reason? Oh yeah, the third reason is like the pause after dinner. So I don't know how many other people feel like this. Actually, if you're watching, do let me know. But I often find that it's stopping eating that's quite hard. And maybe it's because like if you eat fast, you can't register that you're full. But I think once you've stopped for a period of time, you're much less likely to then go and start again because you've started doing something else, right? So if you have your dinner and then you go out for a 15-minute walk around the block, or even you go to your walking pad, or whatever, you do something, you're much less likely to then go back into the kitchen and start eating again. Whereas if you have dinner and then you're kind of like, oh, I could have seconds again, or I might have a little bit of this, or I might make myself a bit of something else, then you can end up just kind of snacking for the whole night. So I think it's quite a nice, like, boom, had my dinner, did my walk. Now I don't eat again until breakfast the next morning. So there's the 3 benefits: the metabolic benefit of glucose clearance, the digestion why can't I say that word? Right, the digestion benefit. I keep wanting to say digestive biscuit, I don't know why. Um, and the pause after eating. Wow. Wow. That was a real tough one for my brain. Okay, I only have a couple more questions. So the next question was on a supplement that I think is called Ainsley and Ainsley. It's like something to help you sleep. And honestly, to me, when I looked into it, it looks like it kind of similar to the hormone balancing one, where there's one key ingredient, which is magnesium, and everything else is kind of fluff around it, and then you make it way more expensive than it needs to be. So if you do want to try this, I would try magnesium on its own. The other interesting thing about this is they use magnesium citrate, which there isn't necessarily anything wrong with that. I think it's a slightly cheaper form, but most of the research on magnesium and sleep has been done on magnesium glycinate. So I would use magnesium glycinate because it has the best evidence. And there's no reason to be using magnesium citrate if you could use magnesium glycinate. However, I still think it would probably work as long as it's increasing magnesium levels, and that should help your sleep. So give it a try, but I probably wouldn't buy the supplement. It's probably way overpriced in comparison to just buying magnesium. And like I said before, then you can get it at the dose that you want instead of whatever they've dosed it as, which I didn't actually check the dose. I should have, but often it's quite underdosed. Or did I check? No, I didn't check the dose. Sorry about that. Okay, and then I have a question from a client, which is about the combined oral contraceptive, and does it mask or alter the presentation of perimenopause symptoms? Do you think it's a bad thing? I'm 38. I've been on the contraceptive for many years. I work in a very remote area, rarely with toilet facilities. So I skip 3 to 4 periods until it's convenient for me to bleed. I have so many questions. Like, where are you working? Where do you go to the toilet if there's no toilet facilities? And that does make a lot of sense why you wouldn't want to have your period there. Anyway, she says, love the podcast. Unfortunately, I live in a different time zone. And she's probably in a very remote area, guys, okay? But she's going to listen back. So the first question about the pill and menopause symptoms, I mean, one menopause symptom you would probably miss is slightly irregular cycles or changes in cycle length. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a good or a bad thing. Like if you're struggling with symptoms, then you would go and see your doctor, i.e. other symptoms that are causing you negative side effects. But a lot of the one thing I maybe would go and speak to your doctor about is the kind of pill that you're on, if you're on the combined pill. But again, that would be something to speak to your doctor about. Obviously, I'm not gonna make any strong suggestions here. But yeah, I think what you're doing at the moment is fine. If you're having other symptoms like hot flushes or changes in mood or body fat redistribution, or maybe, I mean, I've been having migraines. I don't think that's perimenopause, but like some changes in hormones can cause like a mirage. That's not the right word, is it? Anyway, many different symptoms. So definitely go and speak to your doctor if you're worried, but I wouldn't specifically be like, come off the pill so that you can tell if you're perimenopausal. Often they'll put you on the pill to help you with symptoms and to kind of regulate things a little bit more for you. So I don't think it's good or bad. It's a tool. It sounds like it's quite important for you to be on some kind of contraceptive that's going to mean that you don't have to have a period for at least while you're working in the way that you're working. But it might just be worth, if you've been doing, I think you said, no, you didn't say how long you've been doing this. For many years. Yeah, you did. So maybe it's just worth speaking to your doctor and checking up that that's still the right thing for you. And yeah, that would be all. Okay. Myriad of symptoms. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, well, that was great. I had a great time. I hope everyone else also had a great time. And if you do have any other questions or things that you want me to cover, I'm sorry I didn't get through all of them. I have a list, so I will get through as many as possible. And I have them written down for the next one. But if there's anything especially timely that comes up or silly adverts like this that you're sent, then fire them my way and I will debunk them. And have incredible evenings. And if you know anyone who's getting conned by this kind of stuff, please do send them the Science versus Bullshit series. All right, bye.